Hi, I'm Lori Jones, President and CEO of Avocet Communications and host of StrategyCast. Join me and my guests, innovators, disruptors, and visionaries as we explore bold and brave marketing strategies that help you transform, scale, and grow your brand. On today's StrategyCast, we're joined by Celia Fleischaker, CMO of isolved, serving 189,000 customers in human capital management. She reveals how her team transformed a major in-person event into a virtual success, right in the middle of a hurricane. From ensuring attendees earned vital education credits to maintaining sponsor value, Celia dives into the frameworks and strategies that made it all work. Get ready for insights on crisis communication, adaptability, and turning challenges into opportunities. And don't forget to check out the most recent issue of the StrategyCast newsletter on StrategyCast.com. Just like this episode, it's full of inspiration and a ton of ideas that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.
A competitive edge starts with strategy, and strategy starts with knowing how to develop one. StrategyCast is a leading marketing podcast that serves up strategic insights, trends, and tips to help separate your business from the pack. Tune in weekly as host Lori Jones interviews bold marketing leaders who have priceless wisdom and are willing to share. Each episode explores cutting-edge approaches that have proven instrumental in transforming brands into industry trailblazers.
Welcome to StrategyCast. I'm thrilled to have Celia Fleischaker join the show today. Welcome.
Thanks, Lori. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I am so excited to dive in and talk about crisis comms and how you pivot, not only with internal teams, but you were planning, a huge customer show. We're going to dive into all that in a minute and what you did to really turn a crisis into something that was really very, very positive. Before we get there, tell us a little bit more about your journey.
Sure. I'm CMO at isolved, so I'm excited to be here. We're a B2B tech company. We're an HCM provider. So if you think about, my goodness, employees in an organization, their onboarding experience, their benefits that they get, the payroll that they have, we're supporting that employee journey with technology to help their experience better with an organization. We have about 189,000 customers across the
Wow.
country. So I love it. It's very much a tech role where you feel like you're working for and with so many people to help them and things that tend to be very personal for people. This is my fourth role as a CMO. I've been in a number of organizations, all B2B tech, and just love B2B marketing. And then, of course, I'm also, from a family perspective, both a wife and a mother to two great mid-20 something kids. And that takes up time as well, but all in a good way.
Yeah, I love it. We were talking pre-show about I just put my phone down because there was a lot of chit chatter about my girls wanting to go to California over Christmas, and so we had a good laugh, Celia and I did, about no matter what, even though we might have our CMO, CEO title, that MOM title is always front and center, no matter what we're doing, even if we're recording a podcast.
Yes, absolutely.
So I've been so excited to sit down and chat with you because you are really developing this incredible brand. You've got 189,000 customers. Bring us back to the day of your biggest customer show and what happened that day.
Yeah, so it wasn't that long ago. Kind of feels like a lifetime. Early October, we were all set to walk in to Orlando to our Connect event, which is our largest customer event. We were expecting to welcome close to 1,000 people on site. So excited about it, a record size for us. And we got on site with a pretty small team a few days before, and we did notice there's a small tropical storm that was forming in the Gulf. And, I get a call from my CEO on Friday or Saturday and just to, hey, have you seen that? So what do you think? I'm like, it's so far out there. But
Yes.
yeah, we'll be all right. It is what eventually turned into Hurricane Milton, and so we were watching it. We were talking with local authorities. We were talking with the hotel, and just concerned, right? As a company, we're headquartered in Charlotte, North Carolina, so we had a lot of people who had been impacted by Helene not long before that. And so we started raising the question about, hey, it looks like it's going to hit right in the middle of our events. Do you want to have people on the ground? Do you preemptively cancel? And they turn, right? So what if it turned and it just didn't even come to be? But we did make that decision to go ahead, to cancel, to notify everyone, and pivot to virtual. And it was a lot in a couple days, and anyone that's worked on events, especially like CMOs out there and events teams, heart and soul goes into these things. You're planning them for a year, and to have in the course of a few hours a cancellation and pivot was tough, but it was the right call. Anyone that knows or followed Milton and what happened and the devastation that Florida experienced, we feel really strongly we made the right call. It was tough to do, but the right thing for our attendees and our employees.
So this is a very different type of crisis communications. It's still crisis comms. You are
Yeah.
still, I mean, you have all sorts of different audiences that you need to take care of, that you need to be thinking about. And you want everyone to be, in this situation, you want everyone to be safe. And so we're going to talk about the why, which you've just explained a lot about, and we're going to get into the hows and how you pivoted, and then the what, and really that intersection between marketing and HR, which is so important, and really I think at the foundation of anyone in an event like this, not just your internal team at this stage and their employees who were impacted, but also the your customers and their families and everything that they might have been encountering. So let's go back to that moment in time. You're discussing everything with the CEO. You're at your hotels. You've obviously got a huddle room. You're sitting down talking about this. Bring us back to that conversation and the interplay with your own team and what was being said.
Yeah, it was a small team on site. There were only 5 of us that were there yet because we were so early. So we came in the Friday before, and the conference was set to start late Monday. We also had a few members of the production team that had lined up, and we had our equipment being delivered in semis too on the next morning. And so we start seeing the storm and then start seeing the prediction about where it would go in the forecast. And it developed really quickly. And it started with, like I said, the first call from the CEO about, hey,
Okay.
should we be concerned? And then literally over the course of the next, I'd say 48 hours, it just escalated. The storm got named, which is a big step in how they feel about it. The timing kind of started to solidify where it looked like it would hit on the last night, so which meant our customers and attendees would likely be stranded in Orlando potentially. Um, and so we huddled together. It was the CEO and the events team and the hotel really, and made the call. And we're very decisive about it. This is the right thing. We know that it could change, and people might think we made it too soon, but we also looked at arrivals, and we knew that half of our attendees were arriving on Sunday. And so waiting really wasn't an option because then it just gets worse, right? You've got half the people who flew and they might be able to get out, but then there's an expense factor for them too. And so we made the call and then just didn't look back.
And that decisiveness is one of the key attributes, I think, of a great leader, and really just saying, this is it. And we must pivot.
Exactly. And I think that was really important that we were like, this is the right call. Everyone agreed. And then there wasn't a questioning about that call. And I think in crisis comms, like here, it was a pretty simple, the why is so obvious, right? Like if there's a safety issue, it's not always that way with crisis comms. There are sometimes some gray areas. We didn't feel like we had that here. It was pretty black and white. We made the decision. We knew we were going to go forward. And then just really went into execution mode. We didn't want to think a lot about everything that had been. We're like, this is our path now.
Yeah. And at that point, you start building those frameworks, those pivot frameworks, is how I refer to them. And you just, start going through the different audiences, the different vendors, the different sponsors, in your case, everything. Walk us through how you developed those pivot frameworks to really communicate.
Yeah, I think two things for us was we understood the why, and then we wanted to define where we were going. Like, what does it mean for cancellation? And in our case, it meant no in-person events. But we knew we wanted to do something. We wanted to give customers something. We wanted to create a virtual event. We had some factors we had to weigh in on what people were accounting for this event, which was really important. Like they are HR professionals, they have a lot on their plate. And so we call them people heroes. And we always want to take care of them because they're taking care of their employees. And so we talked about, but we know a lot of them depend on this conference for continuing education. It has to be in a certain window. You get approval for it from these organizations. So we made that decision really quickly. We're going to go ahead with that. So we built all the training and delivered it live the week the in-person event was supposed to be, so everyone could get their credit. And then we started really looking in tandem, the immediate comms needed, and then getting us to that great virtual event so we could do that. And I think what you talked about was important. It's thinking about who are my internal and external audiences. We don't want our customers to hear it before our employees hear it. We want to cascade it, but cascade it very quickly because we have just a finite amount of time. We wanted to look at, when we were thinking about audiences, who's directly impacted, and then that broader kind of influence, impact, or indirect impact that we need to think about. And one of the things we wanted to do, and I typically do this, if you're dealing with a common situation, especially in crisis, is previewing it. Like, we're so close to it in that room working at, we get what we're doing and we're moving really quickly, but taking just that step back to talk with one of our customers or talk with an analyst and kind of give them the insight to what we're thinking about and how we're going about it, and getting that feedback. There's just things that you don't think about. And the way I look at it is, I'm in the room making the decision. I have 100% of the information. So me writing those comms is good in one perspective, but who's receiving those comms, they don't have all that information. So talking with someone that does, or is in that situation where they don't have everything, and having them react is gold, I get.
It's very interesting because, the show must go on.
Yeah.
So, you've got the technology build out that you need to very, very quickly implement, but moreover, the value prop. How did you create and maintain the value prop, for sponsors, for customers, for the trainees so on and so forth, knowing that it wasn't going to be in person?
That's hard because I think people got like tired of
Yeah.
virtual events, right? In the pandemic. And so we did have that in mind. We knew it wasn't the same. So when we started thinking about, okay, if we're not holding the event, how do we make them hold? We want to still deliver a virtual event. We want to be able to have them attend an event next year and roll over that registration. We started working through those things so that when customers were calling about, what does this mean for me? I paid for this, and we had good answers, and we educated our teams on those. But training was one where we knew if we pulled it off that week, they got their credit, and that was really important. And then what was really interesting, and credit to our comms team who's developed just really great relationships with analysts and influencers in the space. When we told them like what we're doing, because we had a fair number of them would be on site with us and were speaking, they almost to a T, everyone, okay, what do you need from me? How can I help you? And they came through and did additional sessions, not even planned for the live event, that they would do it. So we had an additional keynote. So we were able to add value content to the virtual event that wasn't even planned for on-site, which was really great.
That's wonderful. I
Mhm.
love that. We're talking a lot about the comms and the message, and I think one mistake that a lot of people make in this situation is assuming that one message is all that is needed. And we, at the agency, we do a lot of what we refer to as perspective talking.
I
So
love
we
that.
get into the mindset of the audience, of that individual, and then we think about, okay, what is the best way to deliver the message to a sponsor or a customer who's got 10 team members here, or so on and so forth. Walk us back to how you built out the messaging framework so that it felt very personalized for each different audience.
Yeah, you're right. You totally starting with that persona and their different perspective was really important. So we looked at employees, and within that, we had employees that were directly involved in the event that we were going to be asking to kind of go above and beyond over the next couple weeks to pull things off. And then you have our customers and prospects that were going to be in attendance, those that were speaking, those that weren't, what was their role, what were they depending on from us. We do have a pretty significant partner presence there. So, in different types of partners. So, you have reseller partners, sponsors, like you talked about, as well, that were going to be on site. And then I think most, like, if you're hosting a big event, sometimes you'll have big prospects or big opportunities that were going to be on site with you. And
Yeah.
yeah. And so, how did we not drop the ball with them? So, we had channels for that framework, who we were talking to, exactly what you said. What is their perspective? What were they looking for out of the event? And what was that order of communication? First things first was just for everyone, don't travel. Here's why. Safety is the priority in getting that out. So we didn't end up with people on site. We did end up with a few who would come in early, and we ended up hosting dinners and taking care of them in the hotel.
Right.
To kind of, because that's tough, right? But we did. We used the framework, built out the plans, drafted people to the team, is what I'll say, because you've usually, like I said, we had 5 on site together, events and comms, but we knew, like, there was so much writing and work to be done with respect to how we wanted to communicate. And you know who your good writers are in the org, right? And you pull those people in, and we did that, and people were just all hands on deck. Great attitude. Like I said, never questioning the decision, but just how do we make this a better experience and a good decision for everybody involved.
How did you decide who would be electronically spoken to versus who might have a one-on-one call or a conversation?
Yeah, I think communication channels in general was interesting because typically we have a very active community, so we were able to use that to get the word out. Certainly email, but our concern was there are plenty of people who just don't check email on the weekend, so we don't usually use it, but we use text in this case to get people the words because we just didn't want people jumping on a plane if they didn't have to. And most of the response is interesting from that. Most people are like, "Thank you so much. I was so worried about." People feel obligated to go because it's part of work, right? That they're going, and they were concerned, and they were like, "Thank you for taking that away. Like, I didn't have to make that hard call." But definitely different communications in terms. The in-person ones came like a call with the leadership team, so they were aware and had background to answer their employees' questions. We did a call with our customer-facing teams to, "Here's the messaging, but tell us what else you need. How do we get," and they just embraced everything about how we communicate and let people know. And then you do have, like, your top sponsors, some people that were gonna be on site with you, and a great example is one person that was coming on site, or a group of people that we had attending. We were like, "Hey, we had all these we're just gonna hold them all virtually. If you're okay with that, we're gonna set you up. We're gonna do this roadmap session for you. We're gonna get you in front of the people you need to because your timeline hasn't changed." And so you just set the priorities and what you need to do for people, and most were so gracious because they saw how
How hard you were working to create
yeah.
for them.
And they knew the why. I mean, that, it starts with the why. Like, people got the why. That did make this situation a lot easier, I think, for everyone involved.
Well, and a messaging matrix, you mentioned the framework had to be a very, very important tool for you to utilize internally because you were
Absolutely.
executing on the fly and so quickly. Walk us through what people should be including in a framework when they might be in a similar situation.
Yeah, we did it according to, at first it's just what happened and why. What's the news? What's changing and why this happened? And then we went through the different people and when it mattered. We laid out, okay, if you're a customer, here are your concerns, like what's happening in my reg fee? Is my travel canceled? Is my, like walking them through in person or persona by persona, just defining that piece. We did FAQs that we had internally. What questions do you think are going to get asked? What do we need to add? And we kind of kept those live and growing throughout the week. Um, but it was mostly, getting that very specific messaging for those individuals that were types of individuals and the roles that were attending and in sharing that pretty quickly with our customer facing employees was really what we focused on.
And if you reverse engineer all this as a retrospect, what do you feel is the most valuable comms strategy that you could share with people?
I think a couple of things. I think one thing, like we do business continuity planning in case of disaster and all that. So we had done that exercise really recently. This was not one of the scenarios we consider, but you kind of have that frame of mind where you've thought through it. I, I do think for large events, for big programs that people might host like that, at least going through it at a high level so you kind of feel comfortable walking into that situation. And for me, I've been working in B2B tech marketing for a few decades, right? And this was the first for me. I've never canceled
No,
an
don't you
event.
like love it though? I mean, it's like this is going to be fun to tackle.
I mean, there is that side. I'll tell you, what I loved was the team in the room. Like, you would have thought, and so many people from the outside were like, "Oh gosh, it must have been chaos on the ground." Like, I can't imagine. And it literally was so calm in terms of just everyone like, this is our mission. This is what we've got to go do. You do this. All hands on deck. Nobody was anyone tackled anything. It's just tell us what needs to be done. And yeah, it was and people that we all comment about, like, it was actually what could have been, I think, a really, I'm not gonna say it wasn't draining, but a really rough experience was just not, because everyone had such a good attitude about, we know we're doing this for the right reason and we're just gonna make it the best it can be. And it was yeah, you get close. I always say with events teams, you get very close because you have big highs and big lows. And this team was just, they were rock stars.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it. I mean, to be able to pull all that off in such a quick manner. What were some of the surprises along the way that happened that you're like, okay, I'm gonna check this one off for the next time?
Yeah, I think it's the partners you go into certain things with. I when the hotel was a phenomenal partner for us, like bringing in their heads of safety, bring like really helping us make that decision. And we had a partner in our production crew, which, like I said, their trucks were pulling up. We're like, hold that, like, don't unload, like, turn back around, head to Chicago. But it also happened to be a partner that I had worked with for a number of shows. I knew they had like a studio that we could go work out of. So we literally got comms out, got a lot of stuff done. And then I think Monday morning, we're on a plane to Chicago to go film the virtual event. And it's being surrounded by people that were okay with the pivot too, right? Like, they were all just, tell us what we can do to help you pull this off. So I think partnerships and thinking about your expanded team and having a set of partners you trust is critical.
Yeah, it really is. And, you know, Operational readiness, I think, is a key point here because there are a lot of brands that could pull this off,
Sure.
but many that could not, just due to the sheer operational readiness that they really don't have. Talk to us about how that really helped you deploy.
Yeah, I think the readiness factor in terms of the team that we had, the knowledge of their space, understanding of, and part of our brand promise and how we built our brand is the customer intimacy that we have and understanding. I think that played to our advantage here. We get our customers, we know what they need, and we were able to deliver something that was meaningful to them. Um, but execution, like people that were very strong and could see the big picture, but then just jumped right into execution and not from the hip, right? Like it was, okay, let's build the plan. What do we need to think about? And just taking those hours,
Yeah.
plan. Yeah. And it wasn't going to be like a meerkat situation where you like you have a lot going on, but we did sit down around the table and just, okay, let's build this out. We had a whole action plan going. We had the messaging docs going, and would it have been great to have more time? Sure, but operationally pulling it off, it went pretty smoothly. And we were honest, like as we were moving through, like one of the things was a platform for the event, like what, and we just sat it to the side. We're like, let's plan it out. The platform will come. It'll fall into place. Like, we have to keep going on these pieces and knowing what we could tackle and when and the order in which we had to do it and just being kind of flexible, giving each other some grace. Of, like, not every decision is going to get made today and we're going to hit some roadblocks. Let's put them to the side and keep moving forward.
And you're going to change your mind on some things too.
We did. We did change forms midstream. But again, it okay, right? Like this whole thing is a change, so it's okay.
You have no choice. There's this very unique intersection between the marketing and the messaging and then truly the HR side of things, and making sure that you're also taking care of your own team members, who, I mean, you really were affected internally by two hurricanes at the time.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about navigating that.
Yeah, and I think we have a great HR team here. I mean, you would expect that, right? HR is what we do, so we should have a great team, and they have an amazing employee engagement team as well. That's part of it. And so whenever we're doing anything that impacts employees, we're working and partnering with them. And there were layers to how we partnered from an employee perspective. There was the team on the ground. How do we get them out and keep them safe and make sure they're good to go? Because there were a few that were like, we can stay longer and help. We're like, no, you have to leave.
Don't you love that? That's great.
Employees, we have a fair number of employees in Florida that we were concerned about. So reaching out and connecting, and HR took the lead on that, right? Who's in Florida? What is their situation? Are they safe? I remember we have a woman that leads our webcast and was doing the bulk of all the training that week. And she was right in the path. And we kept saying, do you need to go? Like, and she's like, no, I feel like about a few more hours here. And she was fine and very safe, but still, like, people are just like, no, I want to take care of this and get this done. And then we also, comms internally, getting people to safety was top priority. The customers, like I said, that we have inside, not employees, but just people in the path that we wanted to make sure we were, the Gaylord where we were is designated as a safe place. So we didn't have to worry about people that were actually in the hotel. But the other, and this kind of nuance and layer to this is, if you think about the number of customers and partners that we have in Florida. And so we worked a lot with them. Like, do you want to run payroll early? Because the last thing you want is your employees not to be able to get paid
Right.
in a crisis. So our support and services team, we're reaching out to everyone in the path trying to make sure like get your payroll done, get ready for that, like all these things so that their employees would be taken care of as well.
I mean, I would imagine the sheer volume of inquiries and questions from a customer service standpoint was massive. How did you manage that? And did you have any AI tools to aid in that?
So I'll say yes and no, this did make me think a lot about what tools would come into play here that would have been great to have. The support team has done a lot of upgrading on the infrastructure side, so new phone systems, new software for the contact center that does include AI, and new support tools from a CRM and support perspective. So those luckily had all been implemented over the last year and a half. And so they were set to handle volume and we were good there. Um we use monitoring tools that have AI included in them to monitor what's going on in the community, what's going on in social channels. Because if they couldn't maybe reach their account manager but had questions about things, we wanted to make sure they could get answers. We have a chat bot that people could go through as well. I mean, so there are a lot of tools that we depended on to understand reaction and situation beyond just kind of the internal feedback.
Yeah, I love that. There's so many incredible takeaways and tidbits here. As a retrospective, were you able to take a look at, this is just a curiosity question, were you able to take a look at a social sentiment? And did it fluctuate at all, or?
We didn't have any real negative sentiment that came out as a result. And I do wonder like if if the hurricane had changed paths, if it had been different, would that have changed
Yeah.
that? So people like, oh, you made the call too early. But the fact that it was a Cat 5 at one point, that interestingly enough, Disney closing is a huge barometer,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
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 So when Disney closed, people were like, oh. So no, because it wasn't questioned, I think that helped us from a sentiment perspective. People all got it.
I would have imagined the sentiment to be very, very high, just based on what you're saying and explaining.
Yeah. Yeah. People were thankful, right? Like that they weren't there.
You mentioned Disney World MLB games were canceled.
The
All,
airport. Yeah.
I mean, everything. I mean, you definitely, absolutely made the right decision there. So some of the key takeaways here, obviously change is inevitable, and it's all about how you pivot and what you do to create safety or whatever the goal, is that, you're tackling. As you look back on, that very crazy, 3 hours, 2 hours, 30 minutes that the decision was made, what advice do you have for our listeners as they begin to plan? And, crisis planning is a lot of scenario planning. And, just like we added COVID onto the list, and, there are a million different things that we now know because of that, you can add hurricanes onto your list, and there's takeaways there.
Yeah, I think scenario planning is key, right? Like I talked about the crisis planning that we do just as an organization. This gives us one more scenario to look at, but at least have going into major events or things like this and having thought about the what ifs, I think just does give you a bit of calm, like, okay, I get like here's what I do if this or that happened. I think stopping and taking a breath and laying out a plan, even though it feels like you don't have time to do that, in the end saved us so much time by taking the time to develop that framework and messaging. It just saved hours of rework that we would have had to do.
Yeah, I tell you, I've enjoyed our conversation so much today. Again, we've talked about change is inevitable. We've talked about the how and knowing your audience, aligning perspectives, and planning your path carefully. The what, which is building that robust communications strategy. And in your case, you really blended marketing and HR in such a beautiful way there. And then you had no choice but to use technology to your advantage. And as we said, the show must go on. And so tell us about the outcome of the show. It happened.
It did. It did. I mean, I think we had over 3,000 unique logins to the training that week, which was phenomenal. We had hundreds of people log into the virtual show. And now we have content we can use for months and months that customers will benefit for. So it went really well. We were pleased.
Well, I tell you, congratulations on just everything that happened. I love, love, love discussing crisis comms. It's just such a fun topic. Any final words for our audience before we sign off today?
I think just one, thank you for having the conversation, and I really enjoyed it.
Well, great. And what is the best way for our listeners to get in touch with you?
LinkedIn is my platform of choice, so I'm pretty active on that, and would welcome people to connect.
Well, Celia, thank you so much for your appearance on StrategyCast. And if you'd like to get in contact with me, you can go ahead and reach me at Lori@StrategyCast.com. Celia, thank you for your appearance today.
Thanks, Lori.
That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on today's show. We hope your strategic brains are spinning with new ideas and bold inspiration that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.